So you raised the thing about where North Carolina students are with respect to reading levels, right? And we're the folks who have to deal with that every single day. So there's no one that is more appalled with the fact that our students struggle to learn than us. We work 50, 60-hour weeks. I've been teaching for 10 years, and for 10 months out of 10 years, I don't have a weekend. Not one. I literally have never had 2 days off in a row for 10 months for the last 10 years. And I'm often working in the summers as well. So there's nobody that understands this stuff better than we do. The reality is that when these budgets come out, when this conversation comes out about education, that obfuscates what the real situation is that we have 25% of our kids in North Carolina that are in poverty. 25%, right? Anybody that is here knows that when our kids come in and they're in communities that are not stable, their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs to get by, they're hungry, they're wearing clothes that are shabby and they feel bad about and they get made fun of. These kids they don't have the supplies that they need, they can't do homework because the situation is so unstable. Those are the barriers that we face every single day in our classrooms. And we've got this Herculean task to try to overcome this, right? And so when you say to us, right, what we hear, right, because this is how our experience is, and we know that this is true. When you say to us that our students aren't performing at the level that they need to perform at, we take that as a criticism of us and a notion that somehow public schools can fix the economy, right? We have an economy that is increasingly filled with low-wage jobs, with unemployment, and with people who are past unemployment who aren't even working for jobs and looking for jobs anymore. So the reality is this: if we were miracle workers and 100% of our students graduated high school with 4.0, 100%, right? The reality is that we don't have enough seats in community college and universities in North Carolina to handle that 100%. And even if they did go, the majority of them would graduate with all kinds of debt. But let's say they go to college and they get 4.0s there. There is still some 60 or 70% of North Carolinians that are going into jobs that pay $8 an hour, $9 an hour, $7 an hour, $10 an hour, and we can't bear the burden of that. We can't be the ones who have the expectation of fixing it. And so what happens is that the school system takes the hit for all the problems that exist in the society and the economy without addressing those realities. And the truth of your budget, right, is that while it is an increase, and I think that the reality is that the teachers have fought pretty well for the last year. And there's been some pretty good national media attention being put on North Carolina. And it makes sense that you raise the salaries for the teachers. But again, ask teachers in North Carolina, and this is maybe, I think we're going to huddle in a second and talk through some options here, some things we'd like to propose to you. Ask teachers in North Carolina if they think it's acceptable for us to get a 10 or 11% raise. One, on the backs of losing teaching assistants that we desperately need. Two, that we lose our rights to advocate for our students, because we're in schools every day with principals who sometimes threaten us, sometimes bully us. We work for school boards and superintendents that make terrible decisions sometimes about local dollars. We live in a state where we feel an attack on public education every single day, and there's people who are afraid to come to this building to talk to you because they're worried they're going to lose their jobs. So yes, you've offered us a 10 or 11% raise. You've offered us this thing that gets us in a number up to 26 or 27. But the loss that we take if we go for that is absolutely inconceivable. And every teacher in North Carolina that's facing this knows this. And so we're looking at that, right? And we understand that. While we also know that more of our students are in families now that aren't getting unemployment. More of our students are in families that don't have access to health care. And we're seeing tax breaks for the wealthiest people in our state. So the reality is that the budget that you all are proposing and the movement in the last few years that's happened, while it gets blamed on the recession, the budget is shrinking every single year, and it's because of tax cuts. It's because there's less money coming in every single year. And so there's less money coming in every single year, and so those of us at the bottom have to fight over every single little bit. And school boards have to choose between school buses or TAs. This is an unacceptable set of choices. And so what we need, right, is we need a solution. If we're going to get blamed for the economy, then we're going to come back and say that you need to put more money in the hands of more people in the state and stop putting it in the hands of wealthy folks.
First, you didn't hear me blame you or any teacher for the problem.
We feel it.
Well, no. I'll back up. You very clearly
what you said, a 40% of third graders not reading on grade level?
I
You laid that clearly at the feet of teachers.
No. I cited a statistic.
No, you laid it
So
clearly at the feet
whose
of
fault is it?
In bad
Whose fault is
implementation,
it?
you said
It
bad
is,
rollout.
it is in some respects the fault of how the educational system has been organized. It is in some respects the fault of the fact that we have a breakdown in the family. It is in some respects the fault of maybe the kids.
Poor implementation, you said
It's
it
the
yourself.
kids. Say more about the kids. Say more about
Well,
the kids. Our kids. they're not-
now here's the thing. What you're saying, you said that the budget keeps getting smaller. Well, that's just not so. I mean, it's a simple mathematical fact.
Pay freeze,
that-
6 years.
Well,
6-year pay freeze. I don't
no,
think
not
about
so,
that.
not so.
Six-year
There was an
pay
offer,
freeze.
there was a raise 2 years ago.
It was offset by a
Well,
increase in health
but-
premiums.
1%.
Okay, so let me respond to you. Okay?
Sure.
Because first of all, you said that the budget keeps getting smaller. It's not getting smaller. You indicated that more dollars are necessary. Well, where would those more dollars come from? Would come-
1%.
Well, okay.
1%. They need to pay their taxes.
Well, now, repeal the tax cuts. Now, the Democratic leaders in the House and the Senate had a press conference before the beginning of this session, and they were asked whether or not they would fund increases in education by repealing the tax cuts, and they
We're
said
not
no.
partisan. We're not
Well,
partisan.
we're sitting here with you, though.
Our system,
What would you do?
our system is such that people get elected. Those people get elected on platforms. Those people, once they get elected, they make decisions. In 2010, the people of North Carolina voted a different majority into the General Assembly. And they voted that majority after elections in which what we said we would do, we did exactly what we said we would do, that we would not extend the tax increases that the Democrats had put in place earlier, that we would find a way to balance the budget, that we would do it without raising taxes, that we would address the unemployment situation where we owed the federal government $2.5 billion that was causing employers around the state to pay more in what's called their FUTA tax, federal unemployment tax, that was actually costing jobs in North Carolina. And we've done all of those things. We have done what we told the people we would do when we were elected in
With all due respect,
2010.
that is untrue. You said you would wait for evidence for fracking. You have not. You said you would support education. You have not. Our student numbers are going up. Our funding is going down. That's inversely proportional. If you divide the same number by a larger number, then that is reduction in funds. That is basic mathematics.
And
I'm sure
I
you understand
Actually,
where we're coming from.
part of the money that we were able to secure to put into the Senate budget, the pay raise we had, was the fact that the ADM number last year was estimated a certain number, and it's actually was lower than that. So the ADM number is lower, is somewhere around $100 million, if I've got my numbers right, of the money that we found for the teacher pay increase was the fact that our ADM numbers were below what they were anticipated to be. So again, we have done what we told the people we would do. The other party is not supporting what y'all are asking for as far as the funding is concerned. At least that's what they said.
I want to go back to a point. You blamed our students' families for their lack. No, you said
Yes, you did.
You did.
Yeah,
you
you did.
said their
No,
family structure, family, the
said
breakdown of our families.
was one of
The
the
breakdown
reasons.
of our families. And I have a problem with you blaming our students' families. I don't know a single parent of my kids that doesn't care about their kid and wants the best for their kid. But how can they give them the best when they're having to work 2 or 3 jobs? My mom works 2 or 3 jobs. So many people I know work 2 or 3 jobs. How are they able to give their kids what they need? When they don't have health care and they're in the doctor, they're in the emergency room, they're trying to get the health care they need, how can they get their kid to school? Like, how can they do these things with all these other cuts? So do not dare blame our students' families.
You're the ones that said that. I didn't say that.
Well,
The breakdown,
we
what does
all
that
heard
mean?
it. We all heard it.
What does the breakdown
We
of
all
family
heard it.
mean?
Breakdown family means,
Is that an attachment?
You said in some cases it's our state. It's on the record. You did say it. Okay.
it's on the record. We know what you said.
What is
And
that
here's the deal.
breakdown of family? Because I have another issue. Often the breakdown of family is also about career folks, and I am a career teacher, and without teacher tenure, or which is really just our due process, I fear for my job. Because there are people out there in the state that are homophobic and would take my job away because they don't love me with their students. So I want you to explain then what you mean by breakdown of family.
What I said was that one of the reasons, someone asked why our kids were not reading as they should.
Absolutely.
And I said I cited a statistic, which was that 40% were not reading. And so the question was asked, why are they not reading? And I said there were multiple reasons. And I was not blaming the teachers. I didn't say that the teachers were at fault. What I said was there were multiple reasons. One of the reasons I cited was that there has been a breakdown of the family structure in North Carolina and in America, and that has created some.
What does that mean?
Well, let me interject here. I do an after-school program with Loaves and Fishes, and it's 100% black students who come, who are underprivileged, who don't read on the right level. They're chosen by their school teachers. They come to our church on New Bern Avenue in East Raleigh, and we work with these children every day after school. They're all black kids. And so when we talk to these kids and we read with them one-on-one, and we try to understand where they're coming from, most of these kids are afraid, a lot of these kids are afraid to go home. The situations at home are terrible. Mom's not there, dad's not there, mom's working 4 jobs, we don't know where dad is. The situation and the breakdown of the family is serious. It's very serious. And to cut education is only going to make it worse for them. It's only going to make it worse.